Welcome back to the channel. And if you're new, welcome. I am your little darling narrator, and on this channel, I read stories. Not just any stories, but I think I read some really great stories for the young readers. And if you are not subscribed to this channel, I strongly recommend you go ahead and you subscribe, because all we do here are read good stories for the young readers. And if there's any story that you like, don't forget, hit that like button. That just helps this channel, and we appreciate all the support that we've been getting. So stay tuned. The name of this story is called Franklin's School Play by Paulette Bourgeois and Brenda Clark. Franklin could count forwards and backwards. He could remember his phone number, his address, and the names of 6 different shapes. But sometimes Franklin was forgetful, so he worried when Mr. Owl chose him to play one of the lead roles in the class play. What if he forgot his lines? Every December, Mr. Owl's students put on a show that they made up themselves. This year, they would perform a salute to the Nutcracker. Franklin had seen the Nutcracker ballet with his parents, and he'd listened to the music at home. He loved the story about a little girl and the toy soldier who comes to life. Franklin had a big part to learn. At home, he said his lines over and over again. "I hope I don't forget what to say," he told his parents. They encouraged him. "If you practice, you'll be fine." Franklin wasn't so sure. The week before the show, there was a flurry of activity in the classroom. Everyone had an important job to do. Goose studied her lines. Beaver practiced her ballet steps. The musicians learned their songs. "Lovely, lovely," said Mr. Owl. Raccoon was in charge of building the sets. His team had already cut, glued, painted, and decorated most of the scenery. Now they were busy trimming the tree. Mr. Owl thought it was spectacular. Bear was the costume designer. He and his friends created wonderful costumes with bits of this and that. When Mr. Owl saw what they had made, he clapped and said, "Delightful." The cast practiced speaking loudly and clearly. Badger was the stage manager, so she prompted the players when they couldn't remember their lines. "That's great," said Mr. Owl. "But where is Franklin?" Raccoon pointed to the art supply cupboard. Franklin peeked out. "I need a quiet place to learn my lines," he said. "I get to the middle and I forget." "Let's work on them together," suggested Mr. Owl. By the end of the day, Franklin could say his lines without missing a word. "Bravo," said Mr. Owl. It was the day before the show. The programs were printed and the seats were set up. For the first time, the students would practice on stage. Mr. Owl directed everyone to their places. Rabbit thumped his feet in excitement. "Quiet, please," said Mr. Owl. "Curtain time." Franklin went over the lines in his head. The curtain opened. Franklin was silent. Mr. Owl whispered, "It's time to begin." Franklin tried to talk, but his throat was tight. Every time he looked at the empty seats, he was scared. "Psst," said Badger. "I'll tell you what to say." But Franklin didn't need a prompter. He remembered the lines. He just couldn't say them out loud. Mr. Owl talked to Franklin alone. "Maybe you have stage fright," said Mr. Owl. "Try not to think about the audience." Franklin tried 3 more times, but each time the curtain opened, Franklin's mouth stayed closed. He didn't want to give up, but they were running out of time. So Franklin asked Mr. Owl if he could switch places with Badger. She could play the Nutcracker Prince because she knew all the lines. They started again. Badger couldn't be heard at the back of the room. Mr. Owl nudged Franklin. "Why don't you help her out?" Franklin stood on stage beside Badger. "Try to say your lines like this." Franklin spoke in a booming voice. He meant to just say one line, but Franklin got carried away and said a whole speech. When he was finished, everyone cheered. "You got over your stage fright," said Mr. Owl. "I guess I did," laughed Franklin. Badger looked relieved. The next night, when the curtain opened, Franklin saw his family sitting in the front row. He took a deep breath. Franklin's first words were soft and raspy. "Keep going," he told himself. And he did. Franklin acted so well that he almost believed he really was the Nutcracker Prince. It was a marvelous show. After the finale, the audience gave the class a standing ovation. Franklin and his friends bowed 4 times. And that night, after a hot cocoa by the fire, Franklin pasted the show program into his scrapbook. It was a night he wanted to remember forever. Well, that ends our story. Franklin had to overcome his stage fright. Have you ever had to do that? He did the work by knowing his lines. He knew all his lines. He just had a problem with speaking on stage. And sometimes that fear will lock you up and just lock your mouth and you can't open it. Now, being on stage can sometimes be overwhelming and frightening. And my tip to you is, if you have this problem, being on stage, be it at school or at church or wherever, what you need to do is focus on one face in that sea of faces or that crowd. Just focus on the one face. And that face can be a relative or someone you're not familiar with. And you just concentrate on that face as you look out. And that face will let you know how you're doing by the expressions that you'll see pending what you are doing. Okay? And I guarantee you that the other faces, the sea, the crowd will disappear. And you would just do your stuff. Now, once Franklin was able to conquer his fear, he was able to do a show really, really well. He was really able to perform. Because remember, he knew his lines. That wasn't a problem at all. And he could speak very clearly and loudly. So he didn't have that problem at all. Now, the takeaway from this, in my opinion, is that sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. What does that mean? That means be like the shoe. Yep, I said that, shoe. And just do it. You know how Nike always say, just do it? That's what you have to do sometimes. Just do it. And come what may, be it good, be it bad, but you just got over it and you did it. Sometimes that's all you have to do is just get over it that first time. And then from there on, you're good. You can swim with the best of them. Okay? Well, until next time, my young readers, I am your little darling narrator. Out.